Thank you for having me today um, at home. And yes, I'm happy to share with you my professional journey and also academic experience. Um, Now, I started my academic journey after a brief professional career on the ship as a marine engineer. I also work in the port with mask line, also related to maritime activities. And later I went to pursue a marine technology career. And marine technology is like it's very interesting course at that time. It's a mix of all field of maritime with 60% naval architecture, and the rest 40% are maritime transportation, marine science, science of the waves, and ship construction, and also maritime economics. So that's why it's called marine technology. It's a very interesting course. I went for a master's degree on that, and when I finished that, I was then hired by Malaysia Maritime Academy to teach as an expert rate lecturer. And after that, when I was teaching, and then I enrolled to do my PhD in marine technology with mechanical engineering, but with more focus on marine risk. So I become a marine risk expert. I work on how to de-risk marine system before they are built, when they are built, when they have to be operated, and at the end of their life, because the reason was working on land and working at sea is totally different. And from time, only the nuclear industry, the airline industry, they normally work on risk across all the system chain or system process to at least remove all the risk or reduce it or control what they cannot remove. And later, the International Maritime Organization get aggressive about this as well. And the formal safety assessment method for system across maritime processes are introduced, and this is what I work on. And also they also encourage the industry to use goal-based approach that focus on objective to achieve a sustainable end for process and also for product related to marine industry. Why? Because the maritime industry is overkill with rules. Why? Because of safety. For many years, there are always like accidents, and they have imposed a lot of rules in a very reactive way. And they now thought that, okay, it's time to start using proactive approach to implement or to implement safety So that was why they become aggressive about using risk, and this is what I work on. And after I graduated with PhD in marine risk safety and environmental risk and reliability modeling of marine systems, I had to implement or use the model I developed in different maritime areas. This include port, it include renewable energy related to infrastructure close to water resources, it include risk related to operations of marine infrastructure close to the coast or offshore or in deep water. And during this period, then I was later employing in the university. I started teaching in the university and conducting research related to first energy and environment because of my background. Then later I have to switch to working on developing new technology to explore the ocean, because the resources of the ocean need to be explored. And I started exploring this, and this happened because of the need. It was a need-based situations with local people who are struggling to float devices to cultivate the ocean. And later, during the course of academic period, I did a lot of work on the risking work, and most of what I did, I published them in close to 280 peer-reviewed journals and 12 books. And that is good, because in academic we have a slogan that it's either we publish or perish, and it's good. And I encourage the African to Nigerian to cultivate this approach of publishing their work, because this is a legacy they can leave for other people to also benefit from what they are working on, and to bring awareness, and also to always give them backing when times come to talk about what they have also spent their time with. Yes, writing a book is very challenging. Generally, writing is challenging because most of the time we have the impression that what we teach and what we write is an indication, a measure that we know what we're doing. And this is also a good advice for everybody to try to write something. And writing has been a culture, even from the age when we don't have papers and all of that. Now, the first book was very challenging. My first book was on sustainable maintenance of navigation channel. I basically wrote about how to maintain the passage where ships are passing, and how to make them sustainable, not just dredging, but also to take the marine life into consideration, the ecological life, because these are natural systems that allow us to live. And the book also emphasized on the risk aspect, for people working in this area to properly take holistic risk work that cover everything that surrounds this kind of operations. And for example, most of the time when we try to do this kind of work, the water is struggling. We'll be struggling to go somewhere else, and also the marine animals and all of this. So my book focused on this, and then my book focused on also calculations about how wide how to measure the width of the channel, and also the ship to match it with the ship that can enter the channel. And beside that, later I published another very interesting book on applied safety and environmental risk, and applied safety and environmental risk model for marine systems. And this book is very interesting. It's about 500 pages, and it covers everything we are talking about today about blue economy. At that time, the topic in 2013, when I published this book, the topic was not like this, but I put loads of my experience, my observation from risk related to inland waterways, risk related to dredging, to aquaculture, to deep sea water, to operations of liquefied natural gas ships, risk related to human, because there are always human error also in marine operations, and how to tackle them, and also the use of simulation for marine training. So these are the two very challenging books. And on top of that, I also published other books like Marine Technology and Sustainable Development. It really covers more elements of blue economy as well. It introduced other area like the use of ocean energy, and this was there are also contributions from other authors in this book. The blue economy word was first coined by Gunther Pauli. He's a Belgian. In 2014, and that was during COP number 3 in Japan, and that was when it was first coined. And the blue economy, that in the COP number 3 they were talking about Kyoto Protocol and issues about refrigeration, pollution, ozone layers, and all of that. But that was when it was first coined. But later along the road, more and more people started accepting the importance of water, because in daily talk, except in Africa, because in Africa we know water is what water means, and in daily life, normal human being forgets how valuable water is. And for many years, governments and also institutions, society never look much about the value of salt water. We always think it's salty and useless, but when you look at the ratio of the seawater in our planet to the ratio of land and even fresh water, is very high, and it is in this salt water that a lot of life are thriving. They are living, and most of this salt water, maybe 95% of it has not been explored. So beside that, it is also the ocean, this big ocean with the salt water, that most of our waste from land are empty into, and it cure it every day. And so because of all of this, they led to the concept of blue economy, and in most developed institutions, they don't call it blue economy, but a lot of research are done in different directions. And today, I think all these elements and components are being put together now by most governments as blue economy, and I am very happy. Nigerian government come up with a idea of blue economy and maritime. Joining them together is even much more brilliant. And then some other countries like Kenya, for example, and like Tunisia, etc. They are also, because most countries that have water now, they are looking into this. And coincidentally, I'm also doing a project for German government. It's not called blue economy, but it's a component of blue economy. It involves, for example, assessing the risk of introducing new technology into the ocean to cultivate life. And the second component involves assessment of co-production, when we co-cultivate, for example, marine life, for example, fish, seaweed, and wind farm or wave energy. Okay, how do you do this? How do we plan the ocean to accommodate this? And these are not something we can just do like that. It has to be well planned, even especially in European water, for example. There are more congestion possibility, and also in some area it's impossible to implement this because of maybe the past and because of data. So the third aspect is stakeholder engagement and processes, how to engage the stakeholder and how to engage them for acceptability, because eventually so these three things are also component of blue economy. So now blue economy has evolved, so every country are looking into this now, and they are building strategy to implement this now. And the implementation is going to be different for different countries. It's going to be site-based, it's going to be data-driven, but it is a very, very brilliant approach of integrating systems, because when you integrate systems, they become more efficient, they also become more cost-effective, and they also provide the opportunity for data sharing, for communication, for things to work together. Just the same thing like different trees, they make magic in the forest. So this is what would be the magic of blue economy, and I think I am glad it evolved, and eventually most of the work I did are just around this, from sailing on the ship to working as a marine technologist to working on developing new technology to farm the ocean, and to involving industries. I involve industry in some project I did related to this, like Technip, like Bureau Veritas, for example, and this is also very key to implementation of blue economy, and also I introduce project-based learning, which is going to be key to the way to bring in the workforce to drive the blue economy. Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting and move for Nigeria to come up with a system to combine maritime activities with blue economy, and again, blue economy involve the sustainable use of the ocean resources, the big ocean, and the sustainable use of water resources in a way that it benefits or it produces economic benefits, and it also produces ecological benefits. Like we cannot say that we want to develop and also forget about the ecology. They have made, in some countries, they made mistake about this. For example, they cut trees and 10 years later, they are looking for birds, and then they started fixing it. So the blue economy is around this too. Like, if there is something need to be restored, okay, that site need to adopt a model, a different model. So different site, the starting point will be site-based, different maritime sites, starting with the component of blue economy, for example, maritime existing systems like ships and port. This has been what water has been mostly used for, and then there are other activities. Water, marine, natural resources can be used for example, the waves, the energy is, even the wind that resort to wave energy. They are forces that we can tap to generate, for example, energy to power our system, and also to distribute them for other places on land. And then the food sustainability, like land use, for example, by producing more protein from the oceans, we can spare more land, because land is very scarce. It's only 30% of the ocean, and we should not be using land to cultivate fish, for example. We should use land to, the ocean to cultivate fish. And then seaweed is another area that many people don't know much about, related to the blue economy under aquaculture. They are more or less called the hidden champion of the ocean in Europe, because they can be used to produce food material, food supplement, pharmaceutical, and a lot of other things we use land for. And the starting point now for your question for blue economy will be site-based, will be also use-based, use case-based, and from the use case, like I mentioned earlier, we have to talk about what are the technology and the infrastructure needed for this site. Now, if we deploy this technology and infrastructure, what are the impacts? And here, then we need a stakeholder to involve. Who are the stakeholders to discuss how much interest they have, and to rank the power of their interest and all of this, and to make sure they have what they need to support the blue economy, because this, especially the stakeholder part, is very important, and involving the community in blue economy is also very important, because eventually they will be the one to provide a protection that is needed. Why did I say this? Because working on land is totally different from working in the sea. So the starting point will be site dependent. For example, site and infrastructure dependent. If a site already has a terminal that can be used for one of the activities of blue economy, and then this site will require less attention related to infrastructure. And now the other things is, if a site we also need to look at what are the history of this site, for example. That is where data will be needed about what kind of wave or wind they have, the water quality of this site, and the biodiversity of marine life. And we need to look at the nature of the seabed, and all of these need to be incorporated into the technology deployment. Now, from my experience, most of the time, the engineer and biologists can hardly work together. Most of the time, there is always a very big friction. But I am one of the persons that break a barrier between engineering and biology. And even we did a project on why the skill set between engineering, biology, and social governance are not working, which was sponsored by the British Council. And so that would be the starting point, to look at the site, to look at what they need, and to look at activities that can be done for the site. And now to also look at how the activities will also benefit people that are not close to water resources. For example, what I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of industry very close to most of the river, but there are also lots of industry on land. And most of the time, especially in this age of adaptation, whereby we are trying to adapt to climate change, and also we are trying to review past design, because most design of the system did not incorporate climate within the process and biodiversity. And this, for example, the effect and also the use of natural resources that will benefit the industry in terms of bio-based material from the ocean need to also be looked at. We need a good economy. Okay, education in Nigeria is, I think there is a good systems, I mean, of education throughout. There are many changes over the years from this, from A level to 6234, for example, and when you look at the whole process and the program, which is done mostly like every other country, more or less like a top-down program whereby they look at the goal of the country to come up with policies, and then the programs are deduced from this, and from there you have the curriculum for the program. Now, these are all good, and the system is there, but the system needs to be more human. For example, to provide the tools that the kids need all the time. This is very important for the student to be able to concentrate on the study. Nigerian and generally African students study in a very hard way, all the way, and they always excel somehow in the world. And this is all good, but the deficiency I have seen, because I used to be visiting professor to Akwa Ibom State University, and I have seen less research being done in the university. Now, research matters a lot, and the research are being done in some other places, but they are not taken very, very serious. Why research matter? Because most of the new things that we teach, okay, beside the curriculum, they are coming from the discovery, the research. So this is very important to take serious in our academic system, and research also require to be funded. But the mentality that, okay, there is no need to put money in research, okay, but to rather put money in something that is already working is not the way to be a leader in academic and technology in the world. Now, it is this education system, whether in terms of practical or in terms of soft skill. Okay, this is what will always determine the future of our country. For another example, I have seen in many places in our country, the maintenance culture is very poor, and maybe this needs to be quickly incorporated into education. And when new system, for example, the blue economy the blue economy ministry that was a maritime that was just started coming, and then new program need to kick in as well, and they need to be implemented differently. Okay, so this is one thing. The other thing is in many of our villages, a large percentage of our youth go for handicraft, and in this, some part of education is missing in terms of theory, how to implement what they learn. For example, they cannot do breakdown of their work and all of this. So we need to do more about this. And thirdly is knowledge and education is not about, and also research, is not about doing and put it in the shelf. Okay, we need to look at the applications, okay, to who is going to be beneficial. We cannot simply do research or teach and put everything in the shelf. We must look at how it's going to be continuously be beneficial or support the growing of the person and the system. Because eventually we need to look at how, for example, our data can be translated to products and services that the society are looking for. So this is something that we need to look at, and also we also need to look at how part of the tax that the working class are paying are used to fund our research. Okay, and yes, we need investment, but the moment we are able to do this also, we are able to show that we are doing something serious. Okay, this will also help to accelerate investment. And lastly, the education system mostly like a foundation system, and it depends on the person what they want to build on it. And meaning, even if the system provides everything, we also need to incorporate the programs that will help the student to be able to develop what they learn, and also to be able to be human about what they learn, because education is not only about knowing mathematics, but it's also about how to make decision, the right decision about what is correct and what is wrong, and when to do the right things, and when to be compassionate about our environment, about our friends, about our family, about other people that needs another hand. The end of Millennium Development Goal. Okay, and then there was sustainable development, and then later there was Millennium Development Goal, and now the SDG really it was brilliant because it brings it narrowed development into 17 goals with relevant targets for different goals, and especially related to societal problems. And the brilliant thing about SDG is it put them in a graphic format for layman to be able to have some understanding about what the goals are about. From recent stories about SDG, the world is fighting whether they can be met. Eventually, I think maybe in some cases they are implemented in a fragmented method whereby things are done, development were done differently, and now this is a lot of work to collect all of these fragments and analyze them whether they fit. It's supposed to be a system-based to be implemented with system-based approach, whereby all the risk within the system, the data are collected and they are ranked, and the priority are identified that, okay, in this year we do this, in this year we do this, in this year we do this. But it was done in a different, fragmented way, and now everybody is fighting whether it's working. And the recent ranking for Nigeria is 160 for SDG index, and again most African countries score very poor, and you can also see this in daily life in African villages, roads. So we have a lot of work to do now, and eventually it is good. We still have a few years now. I think a program like Blue Economy is an integrated system. This kind of system will provide the opportunity for institutions to assess what is working and what is not working, and within the framework of SDG, they will be able to have possibility to get the priority areas to focus on to meet the SDG. Now, this is good for blue economy, and it's also good for maybe green, land-based, or even, so there are groups, and now the SDG 14, for example, is the one that relates the ocean, that is related to the ocean, and SDG 6 is also related to water. Now, maybe another possibility is also bridging the SDG, because they are also interconnected, and in the process of bridging, we can also see the link, if they are probably be bridged or they are broken, and from this gap, possibly it can also help to identify targets that are not met, or targets that and to rank them, and to use the resources that are being the cake resources is being depleted every year, to use them on the most immediately needed areas. Well, I think my philosophy about life is for all of us to understand why we live. There must be a purpose for us to be living, and one reason is to make ourselves happy and to make other people happy, because by making other people happy, we get the best of happiness as well. I believe in this, and I also believe in the fact that just the way our everything is conserved in our planet, everything in life, in what we're doing, is also conserved. There is no leak, so we have to philosophically we have to be like this, to think this way, and this has always been very helpful for me. And another aspect philosophically is this will also be a way to build credibility within ourselves by implementing this kind of philosophy. Now, when I was growing up, I took a course in marine engineering because I think I wanted to see the world, and I dreamed. But I have seen dream coming true, yes. And then I also thought that people have been, going places by water from generations, from the beginning of human as well. And now, in between this, I read a lot. When I was growing up, I read everything until I get to a point whereby I just stopped reading and I started writing. And this writing also helped me a lot, because it tells a lot about more or less recording your life, how you spend your time. Okay, so these are things that are very helpful and about my success. And the other thing is, yes, I found myself in different society from different parts of the world throughout my career, and I think it's always important to have understanding with different culture, to respect different culture, and also to accept the good things and the good people in different culture, because I believe that this is the meaning of civilization, and to be open to know each other, and also to be open to accept those who are good among us, no matter where they come from. And this is what I believe every day. And when I enter new society, I hardly see discrimination, and I deal with discrimination as case by case. I cannot generalize, so it's case by case, and also it's mood based. So because of this, I'm able to have a lot of patience dealing with different characters, different people, different society, and this has helped me. And then when I started working in the university, because of my background, I like to work with industries. I like to collaborate with industries because I think everybody input in a matter is always very, very important to reduce the mistake. And this collaborative approach to doing things has also helped me a lot. And I am still doing that today. And above all, I am a very, very nature lover, and I think today most of us should learn more from nature, because today now I work more on nature-based technology and how to incorporate nature into building things, and this is something else that I think will help me again.
Thank you. Well, you already know my name is Steve Omojafo, and my middle name is Bamidele. That was the name that my parents gave me at birth, because it was like they regarded themselves as not Lagosians. It is Providence that brought them into Lagos, and I then happened to be born here at Odo Street in Obalende. And in fact, we had it, we didn't go to Mercy Hospital then. There was a little home along Odo Street run by a very experienced nurse, Mama Nurse, that's what we, So I was born in that little place, and grew up from there. Like I said, my middle name is Bamidele. My parents probably said, well, we have had it here, but this is not home. As at that time, you will go home with us. No problem. So I started off at St. Matthias Catholic Primary School on Louis Street. And I was in St. Matthias from 1953 till 1960, when we finished with our primary school leaving certificate. Then from there, an extra year at Holy Cross School. We did that extra, they call it prep class. Prepare yourself to go to the secondary school. And from Holy Cross, for 1 year, I moved on to St. Gregory's College, Lagos. Now, growing up in Lagos was one of the best things that happened to us then. Life was good, life was easy, life was safe, life was like everything that a young man could aspire to. We went to school with scholars bus, which was virtually provided for free. When scholars bus was not available, it was fun walking from Obalende, firstly to St. Matthias, and then from there to St. Gregory's College. Life was good, life was safe. You could go out any time of the day. You could play from house to house. Parents knew each other very well. And so, in fact, when you were late somewhere on your street or in your neighborhood, you could sleep there because they will send a message to your home that Dele is here, so don't bother. The next morning you wake up, have your bath, have breakfast, return to your home. There was this community life that we all lived. Parents could discipline children of their friends, okay? Not like these days, you dare not touch any other child. The parents will come and, do a battle with you that I didn't send my child to you to be flogged or to be beaten. So it was a very beautiful life. So went to St. Matthias, went to St. Gregory's College, and then from there to University of Lagos. We were brothers keepers. School was fun. Teachers were all there just to teach you. There was no messing around. There weren't any bad habits that people could be developing along the line, So that was my life growing up. So we were all walking through Balinde to Lafiaji, to Campus Square, to Tokumbo, Okekpopo, So we were children of the neighborhood. We were children of the area. So I'm never ashamed to say I'm an area boy in Lafiaji. Today it has become a taboo, but then we were proud of our origin. We were proud of our place of birth, and we were proud growing up in the neighborhood. So today, still believe me, I get up on some Fridays, I just go to Lafiaji, I stay with the guys. Okay, not all of us were fortunate enough to go through the system. Okay, so those who, in quote, we left behind, we still, a lot of the time, we still talk to them, we still relate to them when there are problems that we could fix. We help out. Because, it wasn't their fortune to be able to have gone. I know some dropped out, on their own volition. But generally, we all like the idea of going to school, but some couldn't make it. But we still relate to them. We are still friends. So I'm not surprised I leave Holy Cross Cathedral and I just hear people call me my names. And I know these people are those who knew me when we were growing up. Let me start by saying that even at secondary school, I read a lot. I was interested in the newspapers, and a lot of the time I read something, there was always this beautiful column of letters to the editor. So anything that I read that I liked, I sit down, 2-3 paragraphs letter to the editor to compliment what they've done, to criticize what I didn't like, and these things were published. And I liked it. Okay? You open the papers and you just see, contributed by Steve Omojafo, or some will call me Bamidele Omojafo. So that kept me getting interested in the media. So when I left secondary school, after higher school, I would just pay a visit to Daily Times, which was in Tinubu, Kakawa Street. I just pay a visit there, and I got talking to people. They would take me to the newsroom, they would just show me how newspapers are produced and all that. That ignited my interest. So when I left higher school, mass communication was what occurred to me. I know that my uncle, you are not doing accountancy, You're not doing engineering. You're not doing medicine. You want to go and become a newspaper boy. I said, yes, this is where my interests lie. So I got admitted to Lagos University and studied mass communication there. And while I was there, I developed a column in Lagos Weekend of those days. Every Friday I was contributing. And I was writing under the name of Akinbodilon. Now, Akinbodilon itself is a name that I picked up in a drama group. Because we had a drama group that we produced all kinds of little plays here and there at J.K. Randall Hall, you know. So one of the roles I played was Akinbodilon. So when I started writing my columns in Daily Times and Lagos Weekend, I just used that pen name, Akinbodilon. You know. So I did the program and I started writing for Daily Times campus news, things that happened during elections, battle between the male and female, problems with the tutors and everything. So it became a very regular program. In fact, I inherited the program from late Golabo Ogusawo, you know, who was my boss in the Daily Times. So I did that program for 3 years, became very popular. It got to a point, Vice Chancellor would call me to say, there's a little thing going on in the university. I hope you have covered it for your paper. And I said, I'm not even employed there. I'm just writing, you know. So I left University of Lagos, had all kinds of jobs that one could do, but I headed for Daily Times because I just had developed a path for myself, and that is journalism. Okay. So while in the Daily Times, worked with the Lagos Weekend, went to Daily Times proper and worked there. I was a columnist, I was a sub-editor, and also a reporter. Combined everything. So that was where my interest grew and grew, and it was very painful when I had to leave the Daily Times organization. And what did I go to? Lintas advertising. When I walked into Lintas and I said to the chairman managing director, and I said, I want a job. I said, just like that? I said, yes, sir. You know, then it was easy to communicate with people. We're not too many, so they listen to you. So he said, what are you doing now? I said, I'm a sub-editor at the Daily Times. So why are you coming to advertising? I want to broaden my space. I want to broaden my experiences. It took about 3 months, and I got a job in Lintas. And I remember Alhaji Babatunde Joseph, when I was going to leave, said, look, Steve, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Lintas. I said, well, we do the same thing. They package programs commercially. Here we do our papers and we go sell, you know. So I said, okay, sir, let me just go gather some experience at Lintas. And Lintas and Daily Times were just 5 minutes walk from each other. And I said, sir, if the editor needs me for anything, trust me, I will spend my time and money, do write-ups for Daily Times. So I was like working in advertising and still writing for the Daily Times, you know. So that was my life. From Lintas, we set up our own company known as Roosevelt Advertising Limited. And Roosevelt, was formed by 3 partners, you know, two friends of mine. 3 of us were at Lagos University at the same mass comm department. So we came out, and I left Daily Times to set up Roosevelt. One of my partners left Cadbury to join us. and Akiodusi left AdMark, another advertising company. So three of us came together and we set up Roosevelt. We call ourselves second generation agencies because before then we were the Ogilvy, the Linters, Grant Advertising, and so on. So we set up a small shop in Surulere and it grew beyond our own imaginations. From Roosevelt, we set up a second line agency called McCann, STB McCann. Got affiliated to a company in America, McCann Erickson. So that was how it all went on. Now, I didn't do banking and I didn't work as a banker. The interesting story is that one day, while still at Roosevelt, no, STB McCann then, I got a phone call from somebody I've never met before. And I picked up the call. He said, my name is ABC, blah, blah, blah. And he said, the managing director of Zenith Bank wants to talk to me. So I said, no, there's no problem. I know I'm not owing any bank and all that. He said, no. He just wants to talk to you. So I picked up, he picked up the line and said, my name is this. And I said, my name is this. He said, can we meet? So I said, no problem. He said, no. So we agreed to meet. And it got to be that he wanted to appoint a couple of directors for the bank before they went public. And what I said to him was, I'm not a banker. I didn't study finance or economics. He said, no. What I want from you is your name and your integrity. Nothing beyond that. So that was the beginning of the story. So I got onto the board and I learned a lot. You know, I'm somebody who doesn't get to a place and I want to show them what I know or what I don't know. You could make a fool of yourself sometimes. So for me, like the first 6 months or 1 year was just go to the meeting, listen to them, know where they are coming from, know what the focus is, and know what the expectations are. So I picked it up from there and gradually I got into the system. Of course, naturally, buy some books on banking, finance, just read, you know, so at least you know how the banks are operating. I've always been a customer of the banks in a very small scale. And all I did was follow the banking trend. You know, there weren't too many banks in Nigeria at that point in time. But I followed through. And that was it. I got onto the board. And somewhere along the line, there was a policy of the central bank. The managing director had to step aside, so to say. The chairman had overspent some time regulated by the CBN. And they approached me and said, you are going to become, at the board, you're going to become the chairman of the board. I said, me? And they said, yes. I met a lot of people here, so why me anyway? To cut the short story long, I was eventually made the chairman of Zenith Bank. And I was there, I was chairman for 4 years. And then CBN rules changed again. The MD came back, and I was very happy to hand over the bank to him. And I said I was going to leave when he came back. He said no. Statutorily, as he had 2 more years on the board, that no, you got to stay and live out your time. And then, so I did. And after 12 years, I eventually bowed out from the bank and then returned full time to my own job, which I've been known for, and that is the media world. Okay, so I get invited for interviews for programs here and there. Like you said, it's always a good thing. You have something you have learned over the years, you want to impact it on the younger ones, who are coming. I mean, my first son, for instance, went through the media scene, now in advertising, and I go on encouraging them. I mean, I retired from active day-to-day operations about almost 15 years ago, but I'm still keeping pace with what is going on around me. Yeah, I mean, the society itself is very dynamic. There's been a lot of changes over time. I mean, I look back to during my own time in the newspaper world, and I can count just about 4 or 5 newspapers then, okay? Morning Post, Daily Times, The Express, and a couple of others. So we knew each other, we knew the practice, we exchanged news information, we exchanged, I mean, if you had a news that was breaking, you want to call up colleagues from other papers, we all go there as a team, right? Because stories will be written from different angles, no matter what you do, So newspaper was great. And it was so good. In the morning, your byline was there, and people were trying to reach you, about the quality. Quality was good. Quality was good. And there wasn't too much of freelancing in those days in the newspaper world. So you were either fully employed or you didn't belong. Same thing for radio. I mean, for instance, television I didn't do much about. While in journalism and in newspaper world, I was writing for radio, okay? Interesting stories. I had, there was a name to this program, the Oddities, Odd World. So we were picking up things that were odd. People that didn't imagine what they were. It's not something that was very common. So we went on doing that. So newspapers were growing, radio was growing, television was growing, and out-of-home media was also growing. And talk about the dynamism of the system. Suddenly, people were now going out of buying a newspaper every day to sit down and hold it in front of you, trying to read from beginning, from cover to cover. Other forms of communication came on. With the advent of mobile phones, things began to change. In our own time, it was the phone you put on the desk and you were dialing it to, a lot of the time you could never get across, okay? Suddenly, mobile phone came onto the scene. And news coverage was transformed completely from what it used to be, okay? So now people on their phone could reach out, you could touch Germany, touch America, touch all parts of Europe, just sitting down in your office to gather information, gather news, what is new, And then, of course, we now had more television stations, no longer NTA alone, okay? Now, with the news stations, things were just expanding. Things were broadening up, and news gathering became something new altogether, and everybody was heading for a new phenomenon altogether. So today, you don't have to be a big guy to be able to tell your stories. Little children tell their stories, female tell their stories, you know. So really we have moved from the days of waiting to read your newspaper to gather your news. Now, with your phone on your palm, you could do wonders all over. But of course, standard also, in some areas, standard will improve. In some areas, standards will go down. Because the multiplicity of media sources create problems. The kind of quality control we used to have in those days was disappearing. And people can build up stories without even being there to know if it is factual or not. So of course, the turmoil that we are going through in the media space now is better imagined. But I still believe that for those who have structures like the one you are building up now, will enable people to know that you got to check, you got to cross-check. Okay? We have laws that control what we say, what you do, what you publish. Of course, they are not as rigid as they should be. So in terms of content these days, you have to ensure that you check your facts before you can believe, what they are saying or make any sense out of them. So really it has become all commerce affair. And this is not going to be the end. The explosion is going to continue. Maybe in a few years to come, we're going to have a stronger media control than what we have now. People are building content. You go on YouTube, you go on all kinds of media, and you are getting all kinds. What you hear from your WhatsApp is different from what you're going to get in your YouTube. You go to Instagram. People are selling themselves with all kinds of stories. So really, for me, we've gone through the era of sanity in the media, and I hate to say, we've gone into the era where anything you can think of, say it, write it, do it, and for the consumers, it's like you either take it or you leave it. But it's good that we can now reach out much, much widely. Thanks to our mobile news. You talk to people in any village in Nigeria, and suddenly one thing that didn't grab us so early was you open up your Google map, and you don't have to stop people on the street anymore. Show me where I'm going. Just go to the app, and it leads you to the front of the house you are going to. So we have a lot of improvements, and I think it's going to be improving some more. All we just need to watch is to ensure that we remain truthful and we remain factual, so that we don't mislead people on the street, particularly people in the rural areas. One day you just see everybody running helter-skelter because somebody posted the news that is not correct. So we need to watch that and put some more control. But I like the growth in the media space. When I got into the banking sector, I saw myself more as a customer than a board member. I haven't been a journalist, which I still am. I wrote so much about what consumers or customers were going through in the banks. It was the period of tally number, Remember this commercial, where somebody carried a mat. I said, what are you carrying a mat in the bag? I said, I want to lay down here because I know before I get my money, I will have slept once or twice and woken up, So I was very consumer oriented. When I got into the banking system, a couple of times my board members will ask me, are you on the board or you are still a customer? I say, first and foremost, I want to remain a customer of the bank who will come into the bank and get properly served, who will come into the bank and feel like human, who will come into the bank feel important, because it's your money in the bank. Even if it's only 1,000 naira, it's your money. You need to be treated with some dignity and respect. And that was my mentality that I took into the board of the bank. I said, listen, I am not too happy the way customers are treated. It is their money, no matter how small. Treat them with respect, treat them with dignity. So they started listening to me after some time. And I said, look, customer service is extremely important. In those good old days, you will hardly hear about customer service in any of the major banks. It wasn't there. But gradually, people started being important. It was more of retail. I mean, yeah, you can deal with the big corporate organizations, but at the same time, it is these poor students, poor market women, people who are out there on the street laboring hard to bring their money. So that was one area I was extremely happy that we developed that area of retail banking and being able to make the consumer the king. Okay? So that was part of it. Then, of course, I said to the bank, I said to them, fine, it is very good to make huge profits. Okay? But at the same time, the customers that come in here and from their money we make our profits, let us also consider the kind of interest they get for their deposits. Today, when the banks take your money to deposit, okay? No. When you go to the bank and say, I need assistance, I need a loan, and you tell them, give them all the facts and figures, okay, they will tell you, you are going to pay interest of 20%, 23%, blah, 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 blah. When they take your money to put in the bank, they give you an interest of 2%, 3%, 4%. And I just couldn't live with it. I mean, if you are giving me a loan, you're charging me so high. When I put my money there, it's also a loan to you. Why will you leave me with 2 or 3%? And I thought the system wasn't quite right. It was too skewed towards the banks than the customers. So I met a lot of pushbacks, in that area. And I must still say, it's an area I think government should still be interested in. I mean, in the civilized world, interest rate hovers between 3%, 5%. In Nigeria, it goes as far as, I mean, maybe in Africa, not just Nigeria. I know we are developing, but at the same time, let's develop together, for both those that we are taking in their money and for those we are giving money to. So there'll be some level of balance. So I really worked hard in that area. I may not have fully succeeded. Then I think finally, one other thing that I think I was able to do at the bank is our staff also requires some upliftment. And suddenly, banks started, employing senior people. They started moving people up. They look more at the system now than just ownership. So generally, of course, more banks have come into the scene. A lot of new banks, so people can spread out, and salaries started going up for bankers and all that. But of course, requirements were also extremely high. So generally, I think today we have a much stronger banking system, and we are still growing. Now, the banks for a long time have been let loose to do whatever they want to do at the disadvantage of customers, like I started off with. Now, our leaders, and when I say leaders, let me point on just our presidents. The system was such that our presidents could do anything they like with the banks. It was almost an extension of the State House. You just pick up your bell and you ring, and the governor of Central Bank will come shaking, and, because you had the power to bring him in and fire him. So he had to respect everything that the president wants. And it's wrong. This time around, I can say, even in some parts of Africa, you couldn't run the central bank the way we run it here. All the CBN governors wanted to do, please the president, and you are free to do whatever you want to do. And it's wrong. It's wrong. I mean, take even Britain here. Have you ever heard this kind of relationship between the Prime Minister of England and the CBN? No. Everybody has his mandate. In places, in climes like that, the president doesn't call up the central bank governor. Go and do this. Go and do that. Exchange rate should be that. Change your policy to be that. I mean, that's part of the problem we've had in this country. So the last government and their CBN just ran this country to their whims and caprices. You leave your monetary policy. In fact, you were running both monetary and fiscal at the same time. You took the Minister for Finance, for instance, and you have no dealings with him or her. You ran their own programs for them. And you did things that they should do, but they couldn't query you because the president, had your back. So a lot of things went wrong. And the result is now here for all of us to see. So look at the changing of our redesign, what they call redesigning of the currency. Now we know there are so many ways you should have done it. But we put politics and added it into our financial and monetary policies. We wanted to do it specifically to change the course of history. And it is wrong. So today, we now know what's happening at the central bank. In fact, if the true story of what went on in the last 8 years was told, I don't know what will be left of this country. You know, I mean, you had this little thing in the Constitution that said the government can borrow from the CBN within certain limits. They call it ways and means. But no. And there was a percentage tied to it. You can't do more than 5%. And by the time you're asking for the new one, you should have paid up. Oh, no way. We went on piling up. It's like just go and print the money. You know what Idi Amin used to do in Uganda in those days. That's the kind of situation we found ourselves. Very regrettable. But I believe some sanity will now come into the space. The new central bank has at least outlined his policies. He has also said, let me keep to my monetary policy, which is my area, and leave the paperwork and how they want to run it, leave it with the, with the people who deal with the fiscal area. So we want to change. We think things should change. Now, before now, we borrowed and borrowed without thinking about how are we going to pay. Who are we leaving this debt for? Now we know it's for you and me to still do our work, put in as much money as we can, no matter how little, into the bank, and revive the banking industry. Okay? So the CBN has its own role, and my prayer and my wish is that they will keep their own part of the bargain, leave other people, The Minister for Finance has said it that much. We should, we all know, simple economics. You don't borrow money to pay your debt. You borrow money for production. You borrow money to fix things like your oil maintenance and all that. Where our money should be coming from. That's what you borrow money for. You don't borrow money for wastages. You don't borrow money to satisfy your whims and caprices. You don't borrow money to just go out there and waste it. Now, you borrow money to pay back your debt. At the end of the day, we are back lower than where we started off from. So really, my appeal to both the president and his cabinet, particularly those that do with finance, give them some room. You put them there because you think they know what they're supposed to do. Give them the space. If it goes breathing down their neck, at some point, it will just be, president said so, president said, even things that the president did not say, the president said so, and it's got to be done. And we are running a country, even when you run your home, you are able to sit down with your little income and plan. Every day we are being told, if you earn this much, use this little bit, keep the rest in the bank, because you never know about tomorrow. So that's where we found ourselves, and I believe that if everything goes right, we should see massive changes from what it was, the last 8 years. We need drastic changes in the system. My mom in Abalinde used to say to me, when I want to be lazy, he will make sure you do what she wants you to do, and he will remind you that hard work doesn't kill. It is laziness that turns you into an inconsequential human being with no sense of direction. We grew up learning hard work, both in school and out of school. I, for instance, hawked on the streets of Lagos with my mom. You leave St. Gregory's College, now not primary school, St. Gregory's College. You come back. My mother was a textile seller. Got it, probably went to Balogun, pick up. When I come back from school after my lunch, get a basket full of clothes, which I put on my head, and we go from street to street. My mother is carrying her tape rule and another measurement stick, and we'll go round Obalinde, Igboshere, Bangboshe, Oshodi, and we were selling. From there, she graduated to owning a shop in Balogun. When I leave school, I was her accountant, so to say, bookkeeper. All the things they sold, I make, keep the records and everything. I helped her take the money to the bank. It was Barclays Bank, what was it called then? Yeah, Barclays Bank, before it became Union Bank in Balogun. So I have learned how to trade. I've learned how to make money. I've learned how to deal with customers. Plus that, I was also a bread seller. Somewhere along Strachan Street, off Igboshere, there was a big bakery owned by the Lawson family. To be able to get enough bread, you got to get there between 5 and 6 in the morning. Okay? So let me cut it short. We learned to work hard. And that working hard continued with us up till where we are today. We also were very straight-minded in terms of what we wanted to be. We played pranks, so we went out to play football, we went out to, to play with the girls and everything. But at the end of the day, you returned home. And our parents didn't spare the rod. They didn't. You came back later than you expected to. They would lie you on the floor and dealt with you. So the combination of the kind of upbringing and the kind of training we went through home probably kept us where we are. And like I said to you before we started the interview, you knew that if you finish your primary school, secondary school is the next thing. If you finish secondary school, you don't know what you are reading for. Not until probably when you go to the university did it occur to you, okay, I got to choose a profession. But all along, we just did it because that was what the system and environment asked for. So, secret of success, hard work, hard work, hard work. No. I had a father who was very finicky about appearance. When I lived on Igboshere Road, our church was on Louis Street, so to say, walking distance. He taught me how to wear full agbada right from primary school, secondary school. I mean, today, you just wear buba and shokoto, you go to church. never was that happening. It's got to be full. Right? Then from there, by the time you got into, my father died while I was in university. Before then, he was always having this very thin bow tie, not this bigger one, bigger sizes now. Thin, even when his dress is khaki, he still had it on. So I admired him, but initially I was on my long tie, up to a point, and I looked back at some photographs we took when we were in the secondary school. And I thought, no, let me go back to those old days. Some people tell me it makes you look old. I said, I don't mind, but these days I have just acquired that fashion taste, which has suddenly become my, what do you call it? Become what I'm known with. And I enjoy it. And I encourage people, once in a while, put on your bow tie. It makes you look good, makes you look impressionable, it makes you look a serious person, and it makes people take a second look at you. I think, number one, parents started sparing the rod. Call it civilization, call it growing up and all that. Parents started sparing the rod because they always whipped us to shape. You knew what was expected of you, and you did it. Because if you didn't do it, your punishment is waiting for you. But as we grew up, you probably will ask me today, do I use the rod for my children, for instance? And the answer is no. And why it is no is that these days the children look up to you. They are more exposed than what we were. More exposed. They know what daddy does. If you show them a bad example, they will repeat that bad example. If they know that when daddy wakes up in the morning, before he goes anywhere, he kneels down to say his prayers, they too unconsciously will copy you. If they know that when dad goes out, he comes back certain time. He doesn't come in at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Subconsciously, they too will know there's something that this old man sees that doesn't make him go out all night. So they copy from us. But then, like people say, I don't know how correct it is, that these days people are so busy looking for money, they're all over the place, they abandon the home to nannies and housemates and all that, and the children a lot of the time are on their own. But people like you and I, for instance, probably had housemates in the house. You see, but the work that the housemaid does, we were also made to do it. Right? Washing our plates. Staying in the kitchen to see how things are prepared. They took us through it, even if you didn't have to do it yourself. And that's why you and I are what we are today. But for the modern young families, most if there's some money to back it up, no, the children don't touch a lot of housework in the homes. They can go out anytime they like. They can wear You know, I mean, you see some little young girls and what they wear. In fact, even to the church, you want to ask yourself, are their parents home to see what the children are wearing? Particularly the female. Even the guys wearing what they, think they don't use the belt, the trouser would just be somewhere on their hips and all that. Yeah, I mean, we want them to express themselves, but within control. So, wrapping up on that, I'm going to say, yes, we grew up under stronger control. Today's parents are so much in love with their children. They don't want to make them unhappy. You don't want to, pick up a stick and hit them. But I don't quarrel with that. But please be there for them when they need you. And don't be scared to talk to your parents. I mean, to talk to your children. No. We should never be scared to talk to them. Because they are not going to take us over. I mean, they are our children. So what you don't want them to do, communication, extremely important. Talk to them. Let them, because peer pressure is extremely strong out there. They're mixing with so many guys from much even richer homes who have more to spoil their children with. Now you are a moderate family, your moderate children have to mix and relate and go out with guys with stronger economic background. There is, there is some disconnect there. Let's bring our children closer. Let's talk to them. A lot of parents don't talk to their children, and it's not right, because the more you talk to them, the more they have that empathy for you. They know you care for them. They know, because you have been moderately successful, for instance, they too want to be successful like you are, and all you are saying to them, follow my footsteps and you may not go wrong. And don't make wealth, money, the thing that should govern your homes. No, don't spoil the children. Give them adequately what we all need to survive, and they will survive. In those days, while all you needed to take to school was 1 shilling, okay? You still see children from rich homes who came with £1 and stuff like that. But let's be contented. Let's teach the children to be contented with what we have. Families are growing, society is expanding, and because they can reach out to any part of the world now, we need to bring them closer to the home. At least up till the time that they are leaving you to go and start up there. But as long as they're still within your influence, it's very important that children and their families come much, much stronger together. I'm going to start with sports. I was an avid squash player. Okay, back in school, a bit of football, a bit of tennis, and all that. But when I started growing up seriously, I loved squash. And I played squash until I was over 50. Okay, and the doctor said, slow down on squash. So today, I do my swimming, okay? I still do my swimming 2-3 times a week, okay? And then, of course, I work. There's this thing that keeps on saying, if all you can do is work for 30-40 minutes a day, okay? And then, of course, I'm an avid fan of football up till today. I wish we could develop a local league so that I could slow down on my European Premier, Premier League sessions. So I love football and I love lawn tennis up to now. Now, favorite color, subdued. Okay, hot colors frighten me. Okay, and if you have to do it, just make it minimal. When I pick my dress, for instance, you got to know you want the kind of shirt you want to wear to match the color of the tie you want to use, to match the color of your suit, so it doesn't run riot. So it's extremely important. And I say to my friends, just Google it. What color matches this and what color matches that? So you don't become like a Christmas tree, on the road. That was the third one. Food. I grew up enjoying my eba and amala. Growing up from Obalinde, okay? So I do my eba, I do my amala. Rice, occasionally. But then these days, from age 70 upwards, the doctors are screaming, watch what you eat, what the quantity you eat. So my wife draws up a weekly timetable. Monday is this, Tuesday is that, Wednesday is that, and she manages to mix up the slightly heavy one and the slightly lighter one so that you have a good mix. With age, you cut down on a lot of things. Cut down on your booze, cut down on your champagne, you cut down on your wine, you cut down on your salt. In fact, it's like they're punishing us. But then they say that is the way to go to be able to at least live longer and enjoy more of life.
Reverend Juliet as based on my ordination into ministry. I'm actually Ni Obu. I grew up in a very unique polygamous home. My father was a diplomat, but he chose polygamy. And sometimes I asked him why he chose polygamy. He said, oh, they needed a lot of children in my clan and all that. So I grew up with a fractured home in the sense of what polygamy is from the point of women, but my dad was a unifier. He believed that all of us were equal, male and female. So I think that was my beginning of my own freedom and liberty, that I had a dad who believed in me, believed in us as females. And I remember growing up when we were in school, my uncles would be telling my dad, why are you spending money on the girl child? After all, they're going to get married. And my father replied and said, let them be better wives. You know, in a very diplomatic matter, based on his training. And so I grew up with that level of understanding, yet I didn't really have confidence because my mom is a Benin princess from the royal house of the Benin Kingdom. And she married my dad, not as the first wife, as one of the wives. I think I'm in the 11th child or something like that. We had more girls than boys and later a lot of boys. And so my mom stayed, but she couldn't cope. She had her own issues. And I grew up with my dad. So I was taken away and I grew up with my dad. So, and I didn't even see my mom till I was about 13 or so. I mean, anybody could have been my mom at that time. I didn't know who. But my dad loved me, though we had issues, rancors within the wives and within the children. And I grew up with a very low self-esteem. Having my mom not being there, and I was told I was not beautiful, I was maligned, but I was intelligent. As a girl child, I was highly intelligent, an unusual intelligence at that time. I didn't see it as intelligence. I just thought it was normal. It's as I walked through life that I found out that I was actually quite intelligent because I was always coming top three. And again, maybe because my mom wasn't around, I needed to prove my point or prove myself. I don't know. But I became a Christian early. I contacted Christianity as a born-again Christian as a teenager. I think for me that became the revolution. God became my revolution because my dad was there and was not there. Being a diplomat and eventually being an executive in many organizations, chairman of John Holt, and doing a whole lot of things as a leader. Not just leader as a dad. He also had to also take responsibility for his community and his cousins, his relatives. In short, my father was playing God in the lives of many. So he wasn't really available as a dad, but he also did his duty of expressing how much he could express. But as a typical African, I don't think he could express as much as he should, and he should have taken some stance that he shouldn't have allowed the things that were happening within the home. And so I grew up on one side with a low self-esteem. I didn't really understand that it was a low self-esteem, but it was, because as I grew older, I could understand that even when people tell me that I'm beautiful, I am fine, I'll look at them and say, this one wants to sleep with me. That's why he's expressing the fact. So, but I focused on my education. I focused on my Christianity. I made my silly mistakes as teenagers, but I was so focused. If there's anything that my life counts for, is that I was a focused child. I was not careless with my life. My siblings could not understand my seriousness. I was a very serious child. I did not, when I make mistakes, I chastise myself. I don't wait for people to chastise me. And I think I grew up with that. So I also had a philosophy of the fact that I didn't want to be dual. What you see is what you get. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite. If anything I hated as growing up as a child were backstabbers, biters, and hypocrites. And I had a lot of that within my family background. As a polygamous home, you expect that. Different wives, different camps, different children, and different ways. Everybody trying to take sides. But because I was the only child of my mom for my dad, I didn't take sides. So I also had that as a philosophy. I never take sides. I must hear from all parties. And people hate me for that because they expect me to lean towards them because they have told me something about someone. And I said, no, let's call the someone up. And let's settle the matter. We're supposed to be Christians, so let's settle the matter. So people didn't really like coming to me to talk because they know I won't gossip. I don't slander. I tell you, if I don't have the assurance to tell you upfront, I will not say it. If I say it, I will say it very subtly, but I cannot boldly just bring someone down. And that's part of my philosophy. I never do it. I confront issues, even now boldly, more boldly, because over the years, as I grew up in Christianity, I started leadership early. By the time I was in secondary school, I was already a leader in fellowship, and also more so I was head girl. Because of that focused girl child and also my intelligence, I was head girl. And double back into university, I joined a fellowship. I was also a leader. So my position in leadership has always been glaring. During my youth service, that's the most funny one. My youth service was in Katsina. The camp was in Katsina, but I served in Jos. And I was the only female platoon leader. I had 33 people under me. So, and I became platoon leader, again, this focused and serious woman and intelligent. So I got to camp on time. I am adverse to lateness to a certain degree. If I'm late, I take responsibility for being late and not to make excuses, because people use traffic to make excuses. Traffic has always been in Lagos. My father taught me that. My father was never late. So I grew up with that, never late. So if I'm late, I take responsibility. And so that focused girl child gave me that position to be the only female platoon leader at that time in 1991. And so I've been comfortable. So you can see people have to take permission from me to go to town. I'm in charge and all that. So I've been thrown into leadership early. And I had a challenge because I grew up now in a polygamous home, and we were in the village often. And my father was so concerned to ensure the cultural context of the hometown. My father is Idoma. My mother is Bini. I'm married to an Ishekiri, whose mother is Isoko. So you can see that I'm a bona fide Nigerian. And also my father raised us up for citizenship. He believed that these were men in the 70s, 60s, and 70s who believed that the identification of a nation, your identity, was important. So nationalism was something that we're used to at home. As we were growing up, we had to read the newspaper every day. We had to listen to the 9 o'clock news. You know, those kind of strict ways of being conscious. Of course, some of my siblings didn't take it serious. But again, this serious girl child, everything her dad told her to do, she took it seriously. And so I grew up with that kind of mindset. But, you know, it was when I looked back, I knew how serious I was. But in the process, I thought it was normal. This is who I am. And so I grew up in that particular kind of background of not my father making us serious, though my father himself was serious. And I think somebody saw me and said, a female child that has her father's mannerism. Not necessarily the integrity of the looks. I shared the looks between both of them, but mostly my mom. But in my character, I have a lot of my dad. So that helped me launch into leadership, because I had a question about women leading because of what I saw around me. The docility of womanhood, the oppression of women, and even the woman permission to be docile and lack of productivity questioned my heart. So as I was growing up, that questioning became the answer to what I do today in women leadership. And I also train for national transformational principles and leadership. Understand that leadership is at the core of all issues of life. If we get the right leader, you get the right solutions. So that has been a summary of my story, that even in my getting married, I was conscious that I knew who I was at that time very clearly. So whoever was going to get married, I could not lose my identity. You know, my journey into ministry and being Reverend Juliet today is a big story. You know, I always tell people the last place I wanted to do was to do ministry. Because as a young girl, I wanted to be a medical doctor to solve women diseases. That was my focus. And so I couldn't get medicine. There was a lot of distraction at the time I was doing JAM. But I did well. At that time, you know, the cutoff points were higher than what it is today. And I ended up with doing zoology. And so I graduated. But while I was in school, like I said, I became more focused again in Christ. I moved from what we call the SOUQ days of no earring, no scarf, no of this, no. And I began to read the Bible for myself and understood that really that extreme is unnecessary. So I found my balance. So even in my church now, I did church outside the campus gate. I didn't do church fellowship. I didn't do campus fellowship. I did church outside the gate. So I had a church that I was involved with. Again, this serious child, this focused individual, ended up again being a leader. I was welfare leader in one of the churches I was going to, but I ended up in another church because that church had an issue and had to close down because of the pastor who was going back and forth. Another story for another day. But this particular church that I went under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Kanus, Emmanuel Kanus, became the revolution. I have, in all my life, I think God threw me under that man to shape who I am today. Apart from my dad, this particular man has shaped who I am today. And today, of course, Professor Vincent Anigbogu. But this particular man brought me to confront my Christianity with truth. And he kept repeating phrases in the days of Dr. Miles Moron's teachings of when the purpose of a thing is not known, abuse is inevitable. So we grew up with that thought in the late 80s with such understanding. And so I was, again, focused child, serious person. I took it so seriously. And here I now began to seek the Lord for my purpose, wondering what's the reason for why I'm on earth. I'm a woman, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children. What is my life? Is that what life is all about? And God began to show me that life is more than that. Life is more than that. And so in 1992, I had a call to ministry to understand that my life is going to be focused on a call. I had a visitation, August 1992, to write down the vision of my life at that time in a summary, based on my understanding. So you can imagine 1992, right now I'm 55. And that was the time I became a deacon also in charge of prayer. My pastor had already trained me. I have never seen such, at that time I almost called it wickedness. For me it was, who sent this man to me? What did I do to him? Why is he picking on me? You know, he will lock me up in a room with a key and tell me to pray all day. And I'm saying, why is it me you're telling to pray? Jack is there, Jill is here, Jonah is there, why me? But I did not know that that was the best thing of the real me emerging slowly. And so I became a deacon by 92 or so, as the youngest deacon at that time with adults. I remember during the elections, towards the elections of Abiola and co, that the nation was in great contention at that time. My pastor made us pray for 40 days. We had a 40 days all night. That is the kind of training. So I was trained in the word, I was trained in the prayer, and I found my purpose in 92. But the Lord told me it is not time. So by 1999, he said, as we enter the new millennium, it is time for your call. And the fundamental call was premise on that fold of the female leader, raising a generation of women leaders to understand that they can lead alongside with men and yet not usurp authority. We can all work together and make the world a better place. And so I began to focus on that. So by 2002, the necessity of my ordination came. I needed to be ordained. I mean, I thought it was not necessary. Since I've already become a deacon as a young girl, I can just do the work of God. I wanted to go back to school to do medicine. I got married at 95, and I wanted to still do my medicine. I was adamant. And here I was, God said, no, that's not the path I've chosen for you. This is the path I've chosen for you. And with a great bang, it was with a great knock on my head to remind me that I am the clay, he is the poorer. And so by 2002, I had to do my ordination under the same Reverend Canos. At that time, I had led Jos. This was in Jos. So I had to go back to Jos for my ordination. And in the presence of Reverend Emmanuel Canos and Prophet Emmanuel Kure, I was ordained into what we call ministry, where I was ordained as a reverend to now handle the call of God. And that became the journey of my ordination into the different seasons of my life. Well, one of the challenges of women playing a role is fundamental in tradition and upbringing. I didn't have a dad who told me I couldn't lead. So my lead was open, was uncovered. I didn't have a pastor who told me I could not lead. So I didn't have that restriction. So coming into women leadership was something that God had already prepared me for. But the challenge with Africa is many women have been told they cannot lead. They have been shown they cannot lead. They have been shoved aside that they cannot lead. They have been raised that they cannot lead, from the voice in the home to the voice in the local church or the religious organization, depending on what religion you belong to. I've told them they cannot lead. And many of these women have not studied to show themselves approved by themselves, to understand that it's right there in the scripture that the day God made male and female, he gave them authority to lead. But the leadership at home regarding the issue of submission is a different ball game. And so I came into understanding that for years I was doing women seminars, women programs, and right now I'm launching out on a women's school of ministry, the Institute of Womanhood and Leadership. But the surprising thing is that I thought that was all. Until 2006, I had a visitation again on the understanding of nationhood and governance. And I began to recognize that as a woman talking about leadership, I needed to know how to contextualize women in the leadership call. And so I began to understand governance, politics, and the whole 9 yards of governing around the 7 mountains of influences. And that's how I also journeyed to Ukraine. We went to Ukraine in 2007 for a training under Dr. Sunday Adelaja to understand politics, God, and nations. And that, I think, also became a turning point of the next season of my life that I'm in right now. Okay, I had the opportunity to be trained. Training is always important. In 2008, I'm one of the first graduates of the Institute for National Transformation under the leadership of Professor Vincent Adigbogu and a woman, his wife, we call her Mama Peggy Adigbogu. So it's a course that we do for 5 months, and you have to also have a project for transformation. So we teach leadership skills, we teach nationhood principles, and we teach a whole lot of soft skills and hard skills. And so going through that institution brought me, apart from the training of 2 weeks in Ukraine, and I had to now do this training for 5 months, and I had to do a project for transformation. And I had to recognize the power of leadership. And by God's grace, in the last 12 years of my life, or a decade plus, if I must say, I've been researching on leadership and nationhood. Unfortunately, I don't have the PhD to back it up yet, but it's loaded. But what I know, I think I can get a PhD within a short while, because I have done so much study to understand that indeed what John Maxwell said, everything rises and falls on leadership, is a fact, is a principle, beyond gender, beyond culture and people. And so Africa's challenge in leadership is that Africa understands positional leadership. She understands that leaders should have position of authority, being a chief, being a politician, as a senator, a president, a governor, and whatever the 9 yards of leaders occupy. But they do not understand that leadership or leaders were designed for service. The problem in African leadership is that we are still under what we call the feudalism. The feudal system that believes leaders oppress others, leaders in authority to have the big share, while other people share a million, or people share the small share. So that psychological understanding of leadership has been behind everything Africa is going through. It's the spirit of feudalism. And Europe also had the issue of feudalism. The West, United States, and many nations also had the challenges of feudalism. But people began to see a superior leadership of what is called servant leadership, meaning that when I take a leadership position, it is tied to leadership functionality to serve. If I'm unwilling to serve, I should not take that position. So Africa is still in that body of thinking that when I become a leader, it's like a chiefdom. It's like a chieftaincy. It's like authority has been given to me now to rule and to dominate and to be the center of the whole circle. And so that psychological effect of Africans thinking in that light has been the reason why we have suffered that with all the resources, because we're unwilling to serve. It takes you serving to find solution and to decode the issues and take people out of their quagmire because you believe in them. And again, religiously, many of us have been stained by a religious concept of the lack of understanding of what true leadership is all about. And those kinds of things are also the reason why we don't have the leadership we desire. We have more of the leadership we deserve because we haven't trained our people, even those who are elites, are what we call elite capture. They have captured the society for their own benefit, the benefit of their own families first and their own cronies. They are not thinking nation, they are not thinking nationality. And so the sacrifice required, leadership is about sacrifice, about servanthood, is about giving. In short, giving to your last, giving unto death, if it may be that, as described. Women in politics and women in leadership is also that understanding of the equality. Like I said, we are all created in the image and likeness of God. There is no inferior individual. Women are not inferior to men. Men are not superior to women. It's a fact. When you become a leader as a husband, it gives you more responsibility. In actual fact, the definition of head of the home, cephale in Greek, is actually the chief servant. The chief servant. So when a man is hurrying up to get married, he's actually hurrying up to become a chief servant. We need to let them. And that's why the word husband is a cultivator. Husband is a cultivator. You're supposed to plant, you're supposed to build, you're supposed to spend your life in ensuring lives get better. And so women don't understand that they are meant to lead. Number one, very few, like I said, in my growing up, very few people had the kind of psychology I had. Very few people understand that women are meant to lead. Because of the home management structure of women and leadership in home, women now discarded leadership in society. It's not the same. The issue of the structure at home is not the structure in the society. A woman can be a boss of a man, but she may have to submit at home. And submission is not submission for oppression. It's submission for agreement that we want to work together and create a better future and collaboration for a better citizenship. Like I said, children are supposed to be the next citizen of a nation. He told Abraham, I'll give you a son that is a nation. So nation and children are equated, even in scripture. So, but we need to understand that women leadership became weakened, especially in Africa, based on this same feudalism. When you have a men-dominated society, men-dominated decisions, is to show that women can't decide. And you see in culture where women are not even educated. So women in politics also, in Nigeria, our political structures and political system is already a deterrent. The system in which we operate is not the system of true politics. That's not the original politics. Politicking requires everybody participating. There's equality and equity. Equity has to do with justice, giving equal opportunity. Most women are shortchanged already because politics also require financing. And many women are not being empowered financially, number one. But you may not be empowered financially. You need to also know social quotient. Many women are also low in social quotient because they've been told that they cannot lead. Remember, leadership is about service is about society organizing. So even for me, when I want to go into leadership in the political sphere in the future, I need to begin to understand in what way am I leading my people now? I have no right to be giving political leadership when I have not served my people. So women must also know how to move from just doing mere charity works to leadership works. What do I mean by that? You may do charity of, oh, I feed the poor, I give clothes to the poor. I do this for the poor. That is not it. That's not leadership. That's charity. Leadership becomes, okay, these poor people that I keep giving clothes and food to or do this, how can I better their lives? What systems can I put in place to elevate their lives to the next level? That's leadership. Increasing the measure of the people. Solving the societal problems. So how many societal problems am I willing to solve for me to deserve to lead? That's why it is abnormal for us to have leaders in the political sector who are not leading their people, who have not served their people. That's why we don't have politics yet. We just have the shadow of it for now. And that's why as a people, we must begin to have elite class who can speak out, organize for us to change the system and educate even more of the followers and even the politicians. Because the followers themselves are the problem, who are supposed to be leaders following leaders. They themselves are survivors rather than followers. They just want to survive. So at a political season, political money goes up and down and people are just thinking about the immediate problem because they have been conditioned like that by these evil rulers to make them survivors rather than citizens. So citizenship has not been formed in Nigeria. It used to be, but we have really, really lost it over the years. So our responsibility as a society is to ensure that we teach women that leadership principles and that they can do it. And when you don't have money, you do what we call, you organize yourself maybe around either a cooperative whereby you raise women together with yourself, have quantum power so that at the day you need to really lead, you have people who are following. You don't just jump on leadership because maybe you have a spouse or a relative who was once a leader. It doesn't work that way. Well, as an ordained minister, I have a parachurch ministry, meaning that I don't run local church, but I've been in local church all my life. I can say at this point in time, we are not, with all audacity. I mean, at 55, I can't apologize. I've been a Christian over 40 years, 41, I think now. And so I can't apologize for that statement I just made. We have failed in that again. The failure is not as a failure of wickedness. I need to put it in context. It's a failure of what we believe church is. We inherited a church system from the United States when United States church system was in crisis. Yes, Christianity has been in Nigeria, Pentecostal, Catholic longer, over 100 years, Pentecostal almost 100 years, or 100 years, about 100 years actually, but the other branches of the Orthodox churches over 100 years. And 200 years of church in Africa. The exit report is still high illiteracy. And one of the purposes of the Bible was for people to be able to read it. That's why it was written. So education was at the very fundamental level of God. Why do we still have high illiteracy? Because the church has not focused on understanding why. Number two, we have high level of sicknesses and diseases. Fundamental sickness and disease that should be solved by solution. The healing ministry is the only one with a plural, meaning God heals in many faceted. He doesn't heal just by laying on hands. There's medicine, there is a herbal, good health, good living, right? We have high level. Then high level of poverty. Poverty is not a final injunction. So when we say the poor people will always be with us, it's not a final junction. It's not a fate, F-A-T-E. It is to make us realize that you will always have a project for the poor to lift them out of poverty, because one of the context of Isaiah 61 is that the gospel for the poor must be preached. So poverty, God is against it. That's why he gave natural resources. He didn't give human beings natural resources to remain them poor. Four, we still have oppression. And so the church needs to understand that the word church, when Jesus himself mentioned church, he meant the word ecclesia. Ecclesia has two interpretations. A coming together of a people, but there's one fundamental interpretation is legislative power, decisive power. The church age, what we call the Reformation age, the first Reformation, the second Reformation age, spoke about how the church was the one that this world that we have today, the civilized world, was created by the church, not Socrates, not Aristotle. It was created by the fundamental principles of the Bible, which has the character of God's goodness and love. God loves man and gave earth for our enjoyment. If he said he wants something to be like heaven on earth, is he threatened by it? No. But we have not understood that church is not in the on the pulpit alone. That is churchianity. Because light doesn't shine in light. Light must shine in darkness. Go ye into the world. And that statement that was made by Christ was to acculturize nation. What does it mean to acculturize nation? That the nations will have the culture of God's goodness. The nation will have the culture of God's love. The nation will have the cultures of God's sensibility. And so when churches don't follow God's path and follow the path of gathering in, from next gathering in, we need more space. From needing more space, we need to raise funds. From raising funds, we build church buildings. We build church buildings that are empty during the week, that should be educating people at various levels and become the center of supporting, because the church decides the decision of nationhood. Isaiah 2 talks about out of Zion comes forth laws. What are those laws, principles? It was Christians, fundamentally. Other religions joined, but I repeat, Christian fundamental in history built the society that we have. Medical, Florence Nightingale, medical care, gave to Queen Victoria 2,000 page of policy. Today, everyone who goes to nursing meets Florence Nightingale. She had a call at 17. Wilberforce, a Christian, stopped slave trade. They are Christian landmark of people who were both pulpit leaders like John Calvin of Switzerland, John Wesley of England, who intervened in the quagmire. The reason for what we have here is what is said, that light is hidden under a bushel. And the church has become church building, local church building has become a bushel. Light is not meant to shine in light. Everybody is supposed to go into the marketplace at different spheres of influence and take the character of God and shape the society into the goodness of God. So the more goodness, godliness that we have, the better you have a society. It was church that made charity possible. And let me end with this by saying that it was church. What we call Sunday school did not start from the church walls. Sunday school was started in England, especially by a man who, British children, these same England children were begging with bowls. And that's why you have the story of Oliver Twist, which is a satire. In actual fact, the children were begging. We had what we call the chimney children. Parents were offering their children for £1 just for survival. Children were going to work with their parents Monday to Saturday to survive. They were living in one room, face me, I face you, in England. Sharing 300 people, sharing one tap outside with buckets. England, 300 years ago. But a man rose up by divine revelation and encounter that said, that is the future of England. What will you do about it? He said, what can I do about it? He said, educate them. How? He started educating them under the trees, teaching them arithmetic and grammar and moral studies on Sunday, because they were working from Monday to Saturday. So Sunday was the only day for school. That's how the Sunday school movement started. This man was a businessman. He called other Christian friends, and the movement started across England. When the movement became fundamental, they came together to now push for a policy of the Child Right Act, where children should stop working and go to school. So compulsory education came through the enforcement of church in society to form it into the character of God, so that society can be sane. Because society itself needs to be delivered. You know, when people say the loss of value, I have a problem, because the value has not really been there in strength. It was there a bit based on the fact that when the Europeans came, we will not deny they taught us certain things through the local churches of that day, which is brilliant. Not the Europeans, politician governance of the Niger Company, which was intended to colonize. We're talking about the ones who went into the religious sectors and trying to make us a better society. Take, for example, Florence Nightingale, that went into South, especially in the area of Calabar and those regions, to stop the killing of twins, right? She came also as a missionary, but under that cover of colonization. So colonization in its fullness were not all bad. They were good things that we should mention. But you see, those people had the value of killing twins, the value of murder. So don't be too sure that we all really had the values that have been lost. Yes, it has gotten worse. For me, that's how I look at it. But the values of understanding familyhood have not been understood. Because we have been generally, like I said, feudal. And we have been generally polygamous and unfair in our home management. I grew up with a cousin of mine. We were eating, there were 2 pieces of meat. My cousin takes the 2 pieces of meat and tells me in my own father's house that I should not eat the 2 pieces of meat, that if I eat meat, I will become a thief. Children should not eat egg. I mean, some of us know about those stories. The new generation may be one to say, what's she talking about? But it happened. Is that values? Are those values? Values of cheating? I was passing Shomolu a few years ago, over a decade, and a child was young, washing plates. A basin of plates, I think it was like an eatery or something, a buka, and the child was washing plates all by himself. And the Lord told me, say, you see that child, he's going to grow up rebellious against adults because he will believe that he has been oppressed. He too is going to make other children wash as he is. Because how do you get a 9-year-old, because estimating is about 9, 10, to wash a whole lot of plates? Where are the adults who should work? Children are not meant to work those kind of work. Children's work must be scaled up according to their age. But in Africa, our children are enslaved. Children are actually born to work on the farms. So by the time the Europeans were taking us to go and work on their own farms, they were doing what we were doing to ourselves. So do we really have the values? So therefore, this value issue needs to be redefined. Because when you say values, where are you coming from? The values Africa need now is the values from God, His goodness, His kindness, His mercy towards one another. And that value has become more scaling when greed has also increased. The level of greed, the lack of understanding of parenting, and the seasons of our life, even as women, one party has to understand. That's the price of marriage now. In the marriage, a woman needs to understand her fundamental role also is raising children. So she needs to balance life between work and children. It's a fact. It's not something, but that doesn't make her less. It makes her even more special because those who serve are always greater. So she'll have a greater reward by raising children with value. When parents are absent, especially moms, that child will have a psychosis that will affect the society. So when we talk about what is happening within Africa, we're looking at Africa did not get it right in parenting. We can't copy the West. I don't believe in copying the West. I believe in copying the values of God. The West herself has mixed up a lot of things that she needs to deal with and unbundle herself of it. But we are being given a clean slate. We have one of the greatest opportunities apart from India. We have the highest youth population in the world. And therefore, it's an opportunity for us to train a new African, a new Nigerian that has the value system of godliness, of kindness, of purpose. That was what shaped Europe. That is what shaped United Arab Emirates. That is what shaped Singapore. And Malaysia copied Singapore. Guess what? China actually copied Singapore too. Well, I don't know. I train, I preach, I teach, I associate. Indeed, I know how to relax. I do know. I watch movies. I love watching movies because they tell stories, and I use them also to teach because in movies our values unbundle. So in movies I begin to cancel some values. I say, no, that's the wrong value. So I use movies to relax. I also read, but reading is not my stronger point, but I read because I'm a leader. I have to keep researching and keep reading and reading and reading. My favorite food, one of my favorite food is plantain from when I was young. Plantain and eggs, plantain and any sauce. I'm just a lover of plantain. My major is plantain. And colors, I like pastel color. I like bright and beautiful. I believe beauty is part of the packaging of the woman leader or anybody else. So looking good, it doesn't have to be excessive, but it has to be done properly. So you don't go about looking so dowdy and lost. I believe that whatever you're wearing should increase your confidence and your outlook. So I'm a believer that life is good, especially when we take it from the perspective of God. If God who created life and gave it to us, how could it be that bad? How can He give us an earth and wants to destroy us? The destruction of the earth is human beings. Whatever is happening on the earth, we are responsible. But if we would be at the center of God's agenda, we will enjoy our life. And that has been my philosophy and understanding that everything stems for how you see God. How you see God will determine how you lead. You know, one of the things I tell people, I have been called to that she, both women, nation as a she, church as a she, but the female as a child, I want to let her know that she's not inferior. She is not. Anybody who told her that she's lesser being is a liar. And she has every capacity within her to achieve the goal, but she must walk in the godliness of God and the righteousness. You can't eat your cake and have it. You can't just change society. You can't just change people and think you're going to get there. You need to walk in that path of principles, the narrow path of life. Do what is right. And again, like me, be focused. The world will one day recognize you when you're focused and serious about doing things with excellence, doing things with capacity, and using your intelligence.
My name is Dr. Agility Obi.
My name is Etemari Glover.
Naomi, well done, and shout out to SOUQ News.
Shout out to SOUQ News. I want to encourage everyone to keep watching SOUQ News.
Shout out to SOUQ News, and yes, tune into them.
Keep watching SOUQ News. They are one in town.
Hey, we're watching SOUQ News.
Keep watching SOUQ News.
Keep watching SOUQ News. Catch them on YouTube and all social media channels.
Hey, my name is Frank Edowo, and I'm imploring you, no, forget that. I am forcing you, coercing you to always stay tuned to SOUQ News for your news requirements.
Well, I think as the name goes, we are still faring very well. We are still holding on. Basically, Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited is a Nigerian company owned by the federal government of Nigeria, the 36 states, and the 774 local governments. The federal government has 47% shares in NDPHC, and the 36 states and federal capital territory, plus the 774 local governments own the remaining 53%. Originally, it was supposed to be a stopgap, build and sell power plants to increase the power availability. But in the process, as the company moved along, they discovered that if you build power plants, you also have to build complementary transmission networks. And then if you have transmission networks, you will also need the distribution network so that the power can ultimately get to the consumers. And so because of the gap that was in the sector at the time, Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited was asked to build more power transmission networks, substations, injection substations. So over time, we had grown into the behemoth that we are today. Principally, we have 8 power plants functioning now, and then 2 are in the process of being completed. So that's what Niger Delta has been. But basically, I can say without any iota of contradiction that Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited has been able to increase the capacity, the network capacity, by about 50%, and of course the distribution capacity by about 60%. We are capable of producing up to 4,000 megawatts now, but there are still some constraints in the transmission network, which is being addressed by the various arms of government and the various stakeholders in the sector. If I want to talk about the problems in the power sector, you need more than an hour program. They are multifaceted. And each time solutions are being found, they are not far-reaching enough. For instance, before the enactment of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, it was thought that the problem was we didn't have enough generation power, and that's what gave rise to the NIPP, which is the National Integrated Power Projects, which was basically to increase the power availability in Nigeria. And there were gaps because at that time, I don't think the solution was holistic enough. I'm talking of during the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo. You remember the National Integrated Power Project was conceived at the time. And it's strange that for the past many years, we are talking about 4,000 megawatts, 4,000. In reality, the available power in Nigeria is about 16,000 megawatts now, between 13,000 and 16,000 megawatts. So you wonder, why are we producing or generating or putting on the grid about 4,800 megawatts? So there's a gap. And the gap is basically the fact that the present network is aged. It's inadequate. There is fragmentation in the sector. You have, as of today, about 26 different bodies in the power sector. And it's a typical Nigerian problem. Once Nigeria identifies a problem, they create another agency to deal with that problem, rather than looking at the problem in the eye and say, this is the problem. And I can give you so many examples. For instance, traffic, which is very basic to everybody. When after the Udoji Award in the early 70s, I think it was in the early 70s, and people had phone to purchase cars, traffic began to grow. Now, instead of taking a holistic attitude and one, train the police to do what they're supposed to do, expand the road networks, and begin to put a culture of driving properly in the country, we created the yellow fever, the traffic wardens at the time. You remember at the time, traffic warden was separated from the Nigerian police. That's right. And the problem was not solved because the people were still constrained to virtually the same network of roads, more cars on the same network of roads. And then we stopped training drivers. So Federal Road Safety Commission was formed. And of course, I'm sure that you all know that the problem became worse. And now all of the state governments are creating their own variants of the Federal Road Safety Code. An example is LASMA in Lagos. And the people are still on the same roads. You know, so whereas we had 200 cars on a stretch of road, now we have 1,000. Now we have drivers who cannot read traffic signs, which are not even there. So today, when people see traffic lights, either in Abuja or in Lagos, I mean, they don't even know what to do. I'm sure that, I can't remember the last time we trained drivers in Nigeria. I cannot remember the last time we trained drivers in Nigeria. You know, it's the same thing with the issue of corruption. When we detected, corruption was increasing, we started creating so many variants of, and I always ask the question, where is the equivalence of EFCC in the countries that we are trying to be like? So we have created EFCC, we have created ICPC, we have created Bureau for what's that other agency? Sorry? No. Those are another problem entirely. The BP and the BPP, you know. I mean, I'm talking of Code of Conduct Bureau. But in all honesty, can we say that corruption has reduced in Nigeria? Can we say that? So the problem is that we don't look at problems in the face and deal with the issue rather than creating bodies and bodies and bodies and bodies. We don't have the variants of EFCC, ICPC, and Code of Conduct Bureau in the countries that we're trying to be like. In this age and times, honestly, there are no, you don't need, it's not rocket science. There is hardly anything you want to do that has not been done before or that is not being done in some other places. I mean, so you see in various sectors that once we identify a problem, rather than look the problem in the eye and providing solution to it, we create another body. It will appear to me that it is finding job for the boys, you know, and that is one of the reasons why we are where we are today. I cannot remember the last time anybody had to do driving tests to obtain a driver's license. I can't remember. In the US, if you want to obtain a driver's license, it's a long process. And I remember my daughter, when she went to the US at the age of 18, I remember when she wanted to go and obtain a driver's license, she called me and said, "Daddy, please pray for me." And I think the first time she went there, she didn't make it. It was one slight error. And eventually, she had to go back, you know, to retake the test. So that's what I see that we're doing wrong. And that has virtually destroyed all the sectors. The power sector is faced with so many problems. I was trying to explain to you, for instance, that the discos have various coverage areas. And if you take them one by one, you will see that some of them are covering a landmass that is bigger than 2, 3, 4 African countries together. You know, somebody was on my secondary school classmates forum. Somebody was trying to do a comparison between Botswana and Nigeria. And I said, Botswana has 581,000 kilometers, square kilometers. But 70% of that is Kalahari Desert. So effectively, what they have is less than 100 and something thousand kilometers. Nigeria has a vast land. Botswana has a population of 2.5 or 2 point something million. You can't compare that to, there's no basis. There's no basis. And so if they have 1,000 naira, their GDP is likely to be higher than that of Nigeria. You know, Nigeria has 210 million people. Yes, officially. You know, you can see the population of Lagos. I'm sure that the population of Botswana is not as thick as Surulere alone. I am not trying to give excuses for what we are in Nigeria or how we're doing things badly. But I'm saying that we have a giant problem. We have giant problems in all of the areas. And we need to put our heads together to provide solutions to these problems. You know, you can say that Nigeria is a country in progress. I know that we have enough human resources, we have enough intellectuals to find solution to our problems. And I'm beginning to see that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is tackling the problems headlong. I don't want to say that they work in silos. I mean, it should not be absolutely correct. I don't want to say that. That would be too negative. I would like to say that there's need for better collaboration between all of them. And then one of the greatest things that we need to do is that there must be a coordinating agency that is not encumbered with or by bureaucratic procedures. Okay, NEC is supposed to be the regulator in the society. Now, like I said before, if you have a regulator, they must be trained. And we shouldn't be ashamed to train our regulators and to ensure that we have the right people in those positions. But like I said, almost all the agencies in Nigeria, you find a lawyer heading an engineering company. You know, I mean, it's not done. And what happens is that I don't want to create a war between professions. But the truth of the matter is that if you are a lawyer and you have you're doing legal consultancy in the sector, that doesn't make you to be chief executive of a purely engineering company. You know, the last time it was an accountant that was in charge of one of the parastatals in the sector, and you know, even now that there's a new government, you see all kinds of people trying to outdo each other here and there. TCN, for instance, is supposed to be in charge of the transmission networks, okay, but you have the independent ISO under them. How is that going to work? I mean, that is supposed to be an independent, and it cannot be under TCN. You know, the discos, for instance, who is supervising them? NERC is supposed to supervise them, but you have on the board BPE, you know, that has 40% of the shares. And they're supposed to monitor them. Are they doing that? And then now the Yoruba people say amukun eru ewo oni wosaleni. That is, if a man is crippled or has bent knees and is carrying a load, it's not likely that the load will be straight because the legs are bent anyway. So that is the problem that we have. You know, the root cause, we are not attacking the root cause. You know, the electricity power sector reform has a transition program. But unfortunately, because we didn't do the privatization properly, we gave it to people who have no financial resources. They borrowed money from the banks to purchase the concession anyway. You know, because they borrowed money from the bank, they don't have enough funds to repair the aging facility that they inherited. So that is a problem. Now the bank is on them. The bank lent them money for 5 years, or you know, whereas this is a sector that is, I mean, you need long-term fund. You know, you need to have enough money to lay new cables, replace transformers. Some of these transformers have been there since 1960 something. To replace them. Look, where I come from in Ondo South Central District, we have not had power for up to 15 years now from the national grid. Everybody is an electricity generator company on his own. When we stepped into it to see what was happening, we discovered that the distribution company did not have enough money to repair the damaged distribution networks. So NDPAC stepped into it, and we've spent almost 3 billion to repair all of that. Or almost 3 billion. I mean, we're talking about 6 local governments. At a point, by the time we had finished the reticulation of the networks in 5 of the local governments, we discovered that there is the source of supply is from Ondo. Ondo has a 2 by 30 MVA substation. One of that substation is gone. So it means that the distance of almost 100 kilometers from Ondo to Ore and to Ilaje, to Igbokoda area, to Mahin and Co. Just one single 33 kV line is coming from that. So by the time the light gets to Okitipupa, what you have is candle light. It's the same thing we saw in Lafia, for instance. For years, Lafia, even the government house in Lafia, was being operated on generator because the single line feeding Lafia and the entire Nasarawa state is from Abuja. So that's why we stepped in and built the 330, 132, 33 kV substation, which was commissioned early last year by President Muhammadu Buhari. And you can see the joy in the faces of the people. Now, in Ondo South Senatorial District, for instance, they are the NDDC, not NDPHC, is building a 132 kV substation in Udenije, which should help to bring power from Omotosho and to that area. But they have been on it for years now. And without the completion of that, there's nothing that can happen in the place. They will still have candlelight. So these are the problems. Now, NDDC is independent of NEC. It's virtually independent of the DISCO. It's independent of the, but they are doing a good work because they have offered to do, they have identified the problem and they have offered to do it. But who is coordinating these activities to ensure that everybody is working? And you know, one of the things I always complain about is that since this past 6-10 years, for instance, TCN has many of its projects are 85-90% completed. Some of the problems are just way live that the government should collaborate with the state governments to resolve. But what do you have? A substation is ready in Akure, for instance. A 330 kV substation is ready in Akure. The transmission line is supposed to come from Oshogbo to Akure, and another transmission line is supposed to come from Benin and drop in Akure. Because of way live issue along the route from Oshogbo to Akure, that project has been stalled for almost 6 years. So there has to be an organization that is above NEC, that is linked only to the president, that will look at all of these things. I talked about the fragmentation in the sector. You know, look, and let me tell you something. I know that electricity is a commercial venture. And when you put your money there, you should be able to recover your investment. However, it's also a social contract between the government and the people. It's a social contract. You know, so if you have such a transmission line, everybody should be involved. And I remember that it has to be a responsibility. I remember when we were doing a project in Owerri. And because the transformers have been there for a long time, we needed to remove the transformers to a workshop somewhere in Ikorodu there for repairs so that when they take them back, it can function properly. And we had given authority to the EPC contractor to go and remove the transformer. But of course, when the community saw that they were removing their transformer, this was a transformer that has not been functioning for the past 10, 15 years. They refused to let them go, and the governor had to intervene. The governor also refused to let them take the transformer away. I had to personally intervene with the governor, speak with the governor, write an undertaking before the transformer can be moved to the workshop for repairs. It's not repairs, but they need to change the oil and make sure it's in good working condition, because it's been on the plinth for 15 years. So there has to be a coordinating agency that is devoid of bureaucratic encumbrance. Initially, NDPAC was created from the federation account. The initial seed money for NDPAC was from the federation account. However, since we started producing electricity, let me put it that way, we don't receive subvention from the government. So our revenue is from the sale of electricity, sale of energy to the network and to what we call willing buyers. For instance, you will see that we still, even outside the country, we sell power to countries outside Nigeria. Yeah. So that's how we derive our, but because also we are owned by the 3 tiers of government, we have also embarked on working with the other sectors to improve the network. For instance, we build distribution. So from the profit that we have, we build distribution networks virtually in all. There is no state in Nigeria that has not felt the impact of NDPAC. And then we, like I said, the transmission substation in Lafia was constructed by NDPAC. It's like LNG. LNG cannot receive subvention from the federal government anymore. Of course, initially, government put in their own investment and the private sector put in their own investment. I'm hoping that we will move away from this structure in NDPAC. I'm really hoping that we'll move and adopt the NLG structure, for instance, and bring in a huge investor to acquire 49% so that we can start operating like an LNG. There's a lot of confusion in the society, and even those some high government officials don't even know the functions of NDPAC. They don't even know. We were in a gathering some time ago, and a former minister who claimed to have been a part of the conception of NDPAC was annoyed when somebody threw a question at him, and he said, "What are you talking about? I don't have power in my house, and you guys are sitting down there." And I had to lecture him and say, "Hey, I'm not supposed to put power in your house. I'm just a businessman, in the sector, producing oil, producing power, electricity, like every other person, like what's the name of Elumelu's Transcorp Power, and selling it. That's all we are." The problems are enormous, but I believe very strongly that the discourse as they are now don't have the capacity. There has to be a restructuring of that sector. Under whatever you want to call it, maybe breaking their franchise into little bits. 1 or 2 of them are doing well. Eco, Disco, Ikeja Disco, yeah. Because, and also, the problems are different. So, but for most of them, look, let me give you an example. If you need to under Yola Distribution Company, I mean, you know how wide that sector, I mean, that part of the country is. If you need to take a 33 kV line from one town to the other, you may be doing 100 kilometers. Whereas under the Eco Disco franchise, I mean, 100 kilometers will do 2, 3, 4, 5 communities. So we need to restructure this discourse. We need to support the discourse to develop a new program tailored to reduce ATC and C losses. What is ATC and C? Aggregate technical, commercial, and collecting losses. Now, when you take power from Ondo, for instance, to Ilaje, 100 kilometers, by the time, and don't forget that along that route, you are dropping power for Ore, for Ajebandele, for this, for that. By the time you get to the end, what you have is candlelight. So you will need to and the discos don't have the finances to do these things. I said earlier that the privatization was not properly done. Okay. I'm not sure that those people have an understanding of what they were getting into. Everybody thought the power sector was like the telecommunication sector. But it is not. The amount of infrastructure that you need to put in place, physical infrastructure that you need to put in place for power is totally different from that. Because apart from your cell in telecommunication and the handset there's nothing that you need to do. You probably don't need to put poles, pay compensation. Fiber optic is for specific areas. I mean, for specific things, and it doesn't stop the telecommunication facilities.
After all, they can use satellite.
Yes, they exactly from functioning very well. Okay. So that the difference is, but you cannot send power remotely. You need cables, you need poles, you need transmission lines, you need all sorts of things. You need transformers. The discos should be responsible for them. But when they don't have the fund, what do? You can see that many of them, about 7 of them, are under receivership now. Some sort of receivership or the other. You can see. Because they borrowed money from the banks and they were not able to pay back within the time they thought, I mean, they were going to be able to pay back. You have to deal with each one of them, you know, on it has to be a tailored solution to each disco. You cannot apply the same brush for all of them. Well, the truth of the matter is that at some point there will be increase in tariff. However, this is not the time for it. I mean, Nigeria, I mean, we are doing a lot of reforms now. The removal of the subsidy has increased the cost of living in Nigeria. The exchange rate, harmonization of the exchange rates is also going to affect the economy and the earning power of the common Nigerian, even though that should not be the case, because I can tell you for free that no business organization was charging their customers based on the 400 and something naira to the dollar that the CBN was and that's a fraud on its own, because CBN knows that there's nobody who is selling anything in Nigeria decides the cost of that good based on the CBN exchange rate. It's simple because they are not sure that they will get, I mean, when they need to replace machinery, raw materials, they were not sure that they could get the dollars from CBN. So this is the best thing that could have happened.
The Naira float.
The Naira float is the best thing that can happen to our nation, Nigeria. And I'm surprised because every expert and non-expert had been advising CBN to do this for so long. So I'm surprised that the CBN was reluctant to do what is needful, and that's about the corruption in the system. So this is not the time, and I'm advising government too. This is not the time to increase tariff. Honestly, subsidizing the power sector is not good for the economy, because the truth of the matter is that 80% of the subsidy in the power sector is being enjoyed by people who can afford to pay for electricity. That's the truth. The low tariff pays only the rich. You know, the poor people just take advantage, just like in fuel too. Look, if you have 10 cars and you put all the 10 cars on the road, the poor man has only one way to go, just to go to office and come back, and you know. But the man who has 10 cars will want, the wife will take one, the children will take one, the workers will take, and that's what is happening in the sector. So yes, this is not the time to think about increasing tariff. It will look, in the past, everybody, the cost of diesel was very high, right? Now, a lot of people migrated to using petrol generators. Now, the cost of petrol is even almost higher than the cost of, because petrol burns faster, you use more petrol for your generator than diesel. So, generating power in your house now, where you don't have power supply from the national grid, is a big problem. No, there is no doubt in my mind that we need to migrate to prepaid meter. I mean, not only intelligent meters, okay, so that when we have intelligent meters, nobody can manipulate their consumption. You know, if you go to some hotels in the past, all of the heavy-duty consuming equipment, their laundry, their air conditioners are connected directly, or they bypass the meters, you know. But if you have intelligent networks, that cannot happen, because it will be discovered and then you will be dealt with appropriately. So there's no doubt in my mind that everybody, and it's in the interest of the consumer too, to acquire prepaid meters. And it's not the only prepaid meters that the discos should supply. It should be intelligent networks. Of course, I said earlier that they don't have the money to do it. They don't have the funds.
What was the intelligent network? What will you do?
Look, if you had an intelligent network in a place like this, for instance, you can determine what is happening without you being there. Even on your phone, you can control your distance. So I'm just trying to use that to explain.
My name is Dr. Agility Obi.
My name is Etemari Glover.
Naomi, well done, and shout out to SOUQ News.
Shout out to SOUQ News. I want to encourage everyone to keep watching SOUQ News.
Shout out to SOUQ News, and yes, tune into them.
Keep watching SOUQ News. They are one in town.
Hey, we're watching SOUQ News.
Keep watching SOUQ News.
Keep watching SOUQ News. Catch them on YouTube and all social media channels.
Hey, my name is Frank Edowo, and I'm imploring you, no, forget that. I am forcing you, coercing you to always stay tuned to SOUQ News for your news requirements.